General Flynn walks free. Arrests are made in the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery. Russia documents released tell us that some pundits on TV weren't telling the truth. Operation Gideon, the failed overthrow of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. And we got guests like Glenn Jacobs, Jack Carr, and Jesse Kelly coming up.
He was an innocent man. He is a great gentleman. He was targeted by the Obama administration, and he was targeted in order to try and take down a president. And what they've done is a disgrace, and I hope a big price is going to be paid. A big price should be paid. There's never been anything like this in the history of our country. What they did, what the Obama administration did, is unprecedented. It's never happened. Never happened. A thing like this has never happened before in the history of our country.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everyone. Celebrate a good moment here, if you will. After years of being dragged through the mud, bankrupted, ruined, threatening him, threatening his family, the thuggery on display from some of these FBI and DOJ folks was completely jaw-dropping. But after years of that, General Flynn is now walking a free man. Now, this is something we've been waiting for, and we've talked about this countless times on the show. And it really is the end of at least one chapter here, which is the left's stop-at-nothing, scorched earth war using the weaponization of the intelligence community, a completely and disgracefully complicit lib media, and every dirty trick and tool the DNC could either push, pay for, or otherwise bring into being. With all of that going on, they tried to take down General Flynn. It looks like they, in the end, were unsuccessful. Now, I would note it's not really victory. Not yet. Or it's not really justice. Now, this is a huge step toward justice. But before we could really say that all has been set right in this situation, what we would need to see is a number of FBI, former FBI now, mostly, I think, all of them, FBI agents and perhaps some DOJ folks in handcuffs facing charges of their own. You might say, what charge would they be guilty of? And to that I would just say, official misuse of position. It's on the books. There are all kinds of ways that when you work in the federal government, if they want to go after you, if you do something really bad, they can. Now, would it stick? Would they go to prison? I don't know. But we know what they did was disgusting. And Comey and McCabe and Yates and you name it, a whole bunch of them, Strzok and Page, they should be facing criminal charges for what they did. And you know I'm not somebody that's always running around yelling, lock her up, lock him up. I'm not a person who does that. This actually demands, this deserves and demands a response in the criminal courts. They ruined a person. They used the power that they were entrusted with by the American people to do so. And it was a scheme. It was a partisan hit. It was done out of a bitterness against Donald Trump and everybody around him. He wasn't supposed to win that 2016 election, and he did. And they wanted to get even. That's what this was. This was their effort to even the score. And with the memos that have come out, we see from the FBI agents involved in this clear entrapment. I mean, this is as obvious as it could be now. I mean, when you look at the evidence that has come out here, we've had to embrace really something of a shift. You know, a journo's position on General Flynn's prosecution has long been a test of intelligence and ethics, and countless libs have been failing that for years. But now their position on General Flynn is really a test of sanity, because believing that Flynn's prosecution was legit, given facts we now know, is straight up insane. Insane in the membrane. This is not something that anybody could still justify. And as you see the Legions of experts and Democrat politicians appearing on MSNBC and CNN crying over the Flynn decision. Oh, the Justice Department has lost its way. Just remember that they were entirely wrong about Russia collusion and the Ukraine phone call impeachment farce. So it's been a tough first Trump term for them. Let's see how they do, God willing, during Trump term 2, which we're still hoping will happen. And I've got to say, between the Waco series on Netflix, which I finished last night, and this dismissal by the Department of Justice of the case against former National Security Advisor, Trump confidant and associate, 3-star general, former DIA director, General Michael Flynn, between the Waco series and the dismissal of the Flynn case, it's not a good week when it comes to public perception of the trustworthiness and judgment of federal law enforcement. Not good stuff. But until the FBI conspirators against Flynn are in prison, we have not seen justice here. And that means McCabe and that means Comey. They're very fond of using the tool of investigation as a weapon against people they don't like. Well, that tool can be used and should be used against them. They should be subject to full investigation. And you know what? They should be held accountable for this. If this was not official misuse of position, I want to know what is. If this is not a form of corruption of office, think of the charges that these individuals have brought against people in the past. They set someone up to lie. Flynn. He didn't even lie. The FBI was lying about what they were doing there. They completely abused their discretion with the law under the usage of the Logan Act as a pretext for this. I mean, the whole thing was absolutely absurd. They should not be allowed to get away with it. And this should really frighten people that McCabe was acting FBI director and that Comey was FBI director before him. Remember, Comey's not really a lawman. He's a lawyer. He's a sanctimonious, self-righteous lawyer. This is not a guy who was, wrestling crack dealers and saving little girls from being kidnapped across state lines and stuff. It's not the FBI G-man you think of at all. Comey's a lawyer and really a politician. And that he was able to, I know, for multiple administrations of both parties, just keep worming his way up the ranks, speaks very poorly to what is rewarded within the federal bureaucracy. But it's not surprising to me at all. People ask me why I left the federal bureaucracy. I usually tell them, how many hours do you have? How much time do you got? There's a lot of corruption and rot, and there's a disincentive for excellence, for free thinking, for ambition, but ambition within the scope of the mission, not just, I'm trying to advance myself up the ranks. I mean holding oneself to a higher standard when it comes to achievement, not when it comes to CYA and kissing up to the right people in positions of authority within the bureaucracy. That's where Comey really excelled, playing the system. And now it's time we hold him accountable. Andy McCabe, who lied under oath and is not being charged, which I think is a huge mistake from the DOJ's perspective. But here's what you have to remember with that. If he was charged, he would be charged in Washington, D.C. Do you think you'd be able to find a jury of Andy McCabe's peers at this point in D.C., which is 97% anti-Trump, basically? You think you'd find a jury that would send Andy McCabe to prison for lying? Nope. He's a hero of the resistance. So DOJ not pressing charges against him, I think, as much as that is just a gut punch, I can see that there's some prudence in it. It feels wrong, and I'm not saying it's right, but there may be prudence. Andy McCabe and others, of course, are still going to be running around spreading their lies and their intellectual filth. Anything in order to justify the decisions they've already made. Attorney General Barr, who, as you know, I don't elevate any members of the administration or politicians into being in hero status or anything like that. These are all just people. They make mistakes. We always got to remember that. We applaud them for their good actions, and we hope for their good character, but they'll always disappoint you at some point. That all said, AG Barr has been the single best pick in the cabinet for this administration for the first 4 years of Trump. in my estimation. The single strongest member of Trump's cabinet, the most important one, and I think he has effectively saved the Trump presidency. I really think that's a fair thing to say. And I know that's a big statement, but I think he saved it. Because if you would have, I mean, just look at he's a nice man and he is a well-intentioned guy. And I know he likes this radio show, but, Attorney General Sessions was just not up for the street fight that he was thrown into. He just wasn't up for it, which was a problem. But here's Attorney General Barr, who is up for it, who knows how this game is played, who understands who the enemy really is. Here's what he says about this decision to drop the charges against General Flynn, which is a huge, high five to all of you listening to this show and all of us who have been pushing publicly or even just among friends for how this was an injustice and Flynn should be pardoned. We were right and the libs were wrong. Don't forget that. Don't just pass beyond this moment without taking stock of it. And here's the Attorney General saying, oh, yeah, we need to have one standard of justice. Play 6.
A crime cannot be established here. They did not have a basis for a counterintelligence investigation against Flynn at that stage.
Does the fact remain that he lied?
Well, people sometimes plead to things that turn out not to be crimes.
What should Americans take away from your actions in the Flynn case today?
I want to make sure that we restore confidence in the system. There's only one standard of justice.
You really know a lot about a person at this stage if they've been following this issue and if they're a public voice on it. If they double down now and say, oh, it's the corrupt Justice Department. I mean, people who are truly just morons. And there's a lot of them out there. The Lawfare blog or one of those sites, one of these ridiculous websites that has legal experts. They're all, oh, this is a terrible day for the Justice Department. What are they now saying? That we should have the FBI go after people for violations of the Logan Act? The Logan Act is so broad, so vague, and so clearly unconstitutional, it hasn't been used in 170 years or so. But we still should, we still should go with it? Come on. This is absurd. But they cling to this fiction. They cling to it. Now, before I get into some of their truly pathetic attempts to defend this, meaning to defend the media's position here, I just want to note that one of the things I'm most proud of here on the show is that we've, for years now, on all these issues of Russia collusion and everything else, I've always been open to all the new facts and data that come in, and I have never had to go on air on this show and say, wow, I really missed that one. Sorry, guys. Wrong on this one. Oh, they really got him. Never happened. You've been supporting me. You've agreed with me. We have been right on the injustice done to General Flynn for years. I have publicly advocated all the way up the chain as much as I can for a pardon for him. Now it looks like that is no longer necessary, thank heavens. But it's a tough situation out there in the country, and I know we've been through a lot of gloom and doom. Take a moment, my friends. Justice. It's a delicious thing when it happens. And we're close to it now with Flynn. We're not quite there yet, but this was a big win, and we were on the right side of it. And people that look down their noses at you, people in the media, or maybe even in your day-to-day life who think you're crazy because you weren't calling a decorated veteran combat hero who wanted to serve his country in the Trump administration like General Flynn, because you wouldn't call him a traitor, you were simple. You were a rube. You didn't know anything. You didn't know any better. Yeah? You were right. I was right. They were wrong. Who are the rubes now, libs? Hey, team, if you haven't already, you need to download Jack Carr's latest book, Savage Son. The audiobook's what I'm listening to. It's fantastic. Jack Carr's a former Navy SEAL. He understands how special operations works. He understands what it is to be an operative behind enemy lines, knows the intelligence community. And so when he writes, he brings all that knowledge to bear and takes you right into the heart of the action. I'm telling you, the book Savage Son is pulse pounding. It is fantastic. If you're somebody like me who grew up reading the greatest thriller writers, you're going to say, wow, Jack Carr is earning himself a place at that table with Savage Son. Download the audiobook wherever you listen to audiobooks. I went with Audible, which is an Amazon company, but you can get it wherever you listen to audiobooks. Savage Son, the latest in Jack Carr's Terminal List series. You know, they're going to be making it into an Amazon series on TV, too. So you want to be the guy who reads the book first. Download Savage Son today. You'll love it. I'm loving it. Check it out, team.
It's a pretty dark place on social media. The very first comment after the story broke that I saw on Twitter was, Putin, if you're listening, high five your asset. And there are Russian flags and Russian memes popping up.
And now we see Bill Barr really just doing Donald Trump's dirty work.
Now he has in his back pocket a little AG who saw to it to let Flynn go.
It is, I think, breathtaking dishonesty from the Justice Department.
This is the collapse of the Justice Department.
Now, Katyal, you caught my breath with the collapse of the Justice Department.
This is a case where the fix was in.
The fix is in.
Not good for the rule of law. It's not good for morale. And it's not a fair outcome.
This is an absolute injustice.
I don't worry anyone who cares about the rule of law.
Mike Flynn's lawyers have been engaged in a smear campaign.
This is a political and incredibly destructive thing to the rule of law.
It's all heading towards the president wiping the Mueller investigation out of the history books, at least as far as criminal conviction.
Oh, my. Just bathe in the media lib tears for a moment. Oh, it's destroying the DOJ. By the way, that's a credit to Newsbusters who pulled together that montage. It's a great montage that they did. Newsbusters does some really good stuff. But I gotta say, what are they even? How are they even making this argument? They never should. It's not possible to tell a material lie about a non-material investigation because the investigation had no predicate. What do these idiots not understand? If someone in the FBI walks up to me and says, hey, have you ever cheated on your wife? I mean, I'm not married, so this would be easy. But you know, have you ever cheated on your wife? And I said no, and it turned out that's true. The FBI doesn't get to throw me in prison for lying to the FBI, right? If someone's dating an FBI officer, or FBI agent rather, CIA officer, FBI agent, if someone's dating an FBI agent and the FBI agent's like, hey, where were you last night? And he or she lies, you don't get to throw that person in prison for lying to the FBI. Do the idiot libs not really understand this? That's what the Attorney General is referring to. It's not really a crime because there really was no investigation. There was no basis for this. And it was clear from the conversation that this was a setup, and that's not justice. It was pretextual. Any normal judge would throw this out. Let me tell you, I'm a little concerned about whether Sullivan will delay this. Judge Sullivan, he's crazy. He sometimes gets it right, but he also talked about treason and charges that Flynn wasn't even facing about a year ago. I mean, so he's had Judge Emmett Sullivan has had some outbursts in this case where he's out of it. He's nuts, but occasionally he gets stuff right. He may slow this down a little bit. Say, I don't know if this can really. Why is the DOJ backing off this? Think about and the person who backed off the case, or rather made the final determination. They're all saying, it's a Trump fix. The guy's been working at the DOJ for 10 years. He's a career professional, and it was his call. And he went to the Attorney General. He said, we can't continue with this. Who really believes that it would be just, what do they want? They want Flynn to get his 0 jail time sentence anyway. That's what he was likely going to get out of this. What do they really think was the victory here? This was all about creating some basis for the figment of liberals' imagination, that is Russia collusion, and that there was all these Russian machinations behind the scenes. This was a mass hysteria. Now, this is all frightening, folks, because the mass hysteria about Russia collusion was really a warning about now the mass hysteria about endless lockdown with COVID-19 that we're seeing. But I'll return to that later.
The president debases himself and reduces himself every day by saying disgusting things about people. And in this case, saying disgusting things about people who dedicated their lives to protecting this country and their fellow citizens. That's all horrendous, and we're unfortunately used to that by now. But I would point out that General Flynn was not targeted. He was properly investigated in a well-predicated case, a case whose validity has been proven not just by those of us who are involved, but later by the Mueller investigation, and after that by the Inspector General's investigation. He was investigated because we had reason to believe he presented a threat to national security. I still think that those things are worthy of investigation. Apparently the president does not.
What a scum. What a disgusting, slimy little disgrace this guy. This guy was acting director of the FBI. I mean, he was involved in making decisions about who was going to be a target of the most powerful federal law enforcement agency in the United States. One that will investigate cases that involve any U.S. persons or interests all over the world. I mean, the FBI is a big deal. And the fact that this guy was running it for months, and before him, James Comey was running it, they thought that General Flynn was a threat to national security. No, they manufactured a belief that General Flynn was a threat to national security. And, at some point, someone should just look this little sleazy, dishonest scum, McCabe, in the eyes and say, how blanking dare you? What have you done for this country that General Michael Flynn hasn't done? What do you think? You think because, you spent a career, mostly locking up guys for, Medicare fraud and running illegal drugs. You think you're a hero, but General Flynn is not? We're all going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and, you're a great guy. General Flynn, he's bad. Because he was willing to work for the Trump administration. Which it really is. And I've tried not to go here, folks, and I know this is a little bit of a digression, but there's a part of me that just can't get over how it is. And I know this COVID thing is horrible. It's all just also so from a historical sense, though, so unfair that the Trump administration was just crushing it. And the libs were in a panic because things were so good. And we've basically now got a real election that's going to happen where it's going to be tight. It's going to be close because of the equivalent of, an asteroid hitting the planet, really. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? But the first 3 years of Trump were they were three of the best years of my life. We weren't all worried about terrorist attacks all the time. We weren't all wondering if, the future was going to be brighter economically and if people could get jobs, and we weren't starting wars we didn't need to. And, but now the libs get lucky. They get lucky with the devastation and catastrophe that has hit the entire world. But now they can put forward, Biden, the El Cid candidate. Just put him on that horse and send him off into battle, prop the body up and just send El Cid out there and they'll run away. Great movie, by the way. Worth watching if you've never seen it. Real masterpiece for what it is. But I go back here to McCabe. I don't understand how anyone can take this guy even a little bit seriously. I mean, Comey went to Twitter that this was a dark day for the Department of Justice. I think it's lost its way is what he said about it. That was the quote on Twitter. James Comey, who, remember, these people that are still treated as having all this credibility in the media, their own institution has found them to be dishonest, to have broken rules, to have set a horrible example for the rank and file of the FBI. And they're not apologetic at all, not a little bit. McCabe, the same guy, the same smarmy little jerk. That's all. This was a legitimate investigation, and these people were locking people up for years and years and years. Do you think Comey and McCabe have good judgment about who should go to prison? Now you would say, Buck, they're the prosecutors. Yeah, but the FBI is working hand in glove with the prosecutors, and the FBI decides when. You know what the most momentous decision is in the whole apparatus of federal law enforcement? who to investigate and who not to. That's the first step. And to investigate is often to destroy, right? If they want to go after you, just the investigative process. Ask anybody who, works at a financial firm or works at a big company. All it takes is those dudes and dudettes in windbreakers that say FBI to come into your office. Doesn't matter if 2 weeks later it was, whoopsie, we made a mistake. All it takes is the FBI to come in your office, photos on TV and in the newspaper, and your company may be done and your reputation may never recover. So the decision to investigate is the first real assault. And then the decision to prosecute is the decision to destroy. As I've told you, once you're prosecuted, as they've done to Flynn, you're bankrupted, you're ruined. Where does Flynn go to get his reputation back? I really mean this, too. General Flynn deserves to be back in the Trump administration. This is not a joke. This is not a troll. They robbed him of this. And they will say, oh, but, he lied to Mike Pence. No, now we find out the FBI didn't think he lied. He really just didn't even remember, because this was such an insignificant conversation with Kislyak among all the different things that are going on for an incoming national security advisor. He's basically saying, hey, man, just chill. We're coming in. We'll handle things a little bit differently over the course of a conversation. That's it. Nothing illegal about that. It was the right thing to tell him. What was wrong was Obama being Mr. Tough Guy as he's leaving office, not going to be in power anymore, and just kicking sand in the eyes of the Russians. Why? Not because he cares about Russia. As you remember, I will transmit this to Vladimir, right? I'll have more space to maneuver after the next election, after, the people can't actually judge me for the stuff I do. And then Obama gets all tough when he's not going to be president anymore, makes life harder for the incoming administration, and we know that he got all fired up about Russia because Hillary lost because of Russian interference. No, Hillary lost because she's horrible. All right? We all know it. Oh, but no, McCabe still sticks to the script here. Still saying the usual bull crap. Man, team, should I do a podcast where I can actually use salty language? I've really been thinking about this. Not for the kids, all right? We'd have an 18-plus warning on. I feel like it'd be fun to do a scotch and beer version. I can't drink beer, but a scotch and beer version of this podcast for just the adults, where I could just do we bring producer Mark in too. You want to hear salty language. The man is not shy. But anyway, this McCabe thing, this whole thing rubs me the wrong way, because I also remember I had a few run-ins in my day, relatively minor ones, but I had a few run-ins with the internal security apparatus of the CIA. And they were Andy McCabe's and they were Jim Comey's, except much lower level. But they were bad people. They were bad people who were bitter and weren't really contributing to the mission. And all they do is harass people and just, rifle through your finances and sift through your underwear drawer and see what they find. They're gross. Not all of them, pretty much all of them, but most of them. So I understand this mentality. Oh, I'm just doing my job. Really? You pick when to do your job and when not to. So don't ever say you're not just doing your job, or you're just doing your job. But here's McCabe for you. Still sticking with it. Play clip 10.
Conservative media has been obsessed with finding some indication of a setup since this all started, several years ago. The simple fact is it absolutely did not happen. And I think that those notes, if in fact they are Bill Priestap's, are indicative of that. The team got together and discussed the strategy. How do we approach this interview? What sorts of things should we be thinking about? I think those notes reflect one person's internal deliberations across the range of options that might take place. We strategize about interviews every day. When we sit down with a terrorist, we think about, will they admit to the crimes that we think they have committed, or will they lie about their known associations? If they lie, will that give us something else, additional leverage that we can apply in our investigation? That's exactly what happened with General Flynn.
What were they investigating? That's a real journalist would push that. I'm sorry, what were you investigating? The Logan Act? You really think that that's okay? That's where you have to drill in and look this beady-eyed little scum McCabe right in the face and say, I'm sorry, what do you think you're doing, tough guy? You're going after a decorated veteran who's the incoming national security advisor with the Logan Act. They had already been told they were going to close the counterintelligence investigation on him. They knew there was nothing. And people bring up the FARA registration. I mean, my friends, if you know enough about federal law, there's a whole book written by Harvey Silvergate, and it's called like 2 felonies a day or 5 felonies a day or whatever it is. And it's just about all the laws you're breaking all the time without even realizing it. But we assume, and we shouldn't have to, but we assume that law enforcement's going to prioritize and that, you have to actually do something bad that hurts someone or something for there to be consequences against you. It can't just be like, yeah, there's this obscure law that no one's ever really heard of and knows about, and you couldn't even define what it is, but we're going to get you with that one. That's how McCabe plays the game. Straight out of Lavrenti Beria of the Soviet Union, would be very proud of the mentality that Comey and McCabe have. These people are disgusting. I would not shake James Comey's hand. I would not show James Comey respect in person. I do not think he is deserving of it. I think he's a bad human being who needs to do a lot of penance. Same thing with McCabe. This isn't just some partisan spat. These are people who are undermining the very foundation of our country's judicial system, of our law enforcement system. They are breaking faith with the American people, with institutions that can do any of us real harm. The greatest threat to tyranny that we face is from our own institutions turning against us and abandoning the Constitution. For partisan reasons, thinking that they're making the country a better place in the process. Everyone always thinks there's a good reason for whatever they're doing. Doesn't mean that they're right, as we know. Every evildoer will have some explanation for why they're doing what they do. The fact that Comey and McCabe are likely to escape prison just goes to show you that we still don't have any real accountability in our system. But thank heavens, General Flynn is not going to have this on his record. And I've never seen before what happens at this point because he hasn't been sentenced. So I'm assuming that they'll wipe this away. They're dropping the case against him. But Trump should just write a pardon for him anyway, just to be on the safe side. And he should bring him back into the administration. He should make him a senior advisor for intelligence coordination with law enforcement. How about that? That'd be a great idea. And have some of these deep state morons who thought they knew better than the American people and wanted to play games, they'd have to go in and brief Flynn when he wants a briefing, answer his questions, write some memos for him, go get him some coffee.
That iconic music screams summer, and we all scream for ice cream. But during a pandemic, social distance the rule, getting close to the ice cream man could mean getting something else. Fact of life. Yet here's Mr. Freeze, not his name, in his truck of treats, unmasked, ungloved, taking cash for cones in the Northwest Burbs. That's when CBS 2 assignment editor Greg Kelly, father of 2, dad on a bike, said, wait a minute.
You think it's a good idea to be doing this with the stay-at-home order? With COVID-19?
Eventually, our Greg got a bit closer, tried to get an answer from Mr. Freeze. Again, not his name.
Why aren't you wearing a mask, sir?
Why are you trying to take
Why are you selling
ice
cream to children without wearing a mask?
Why are you trying to... Are you sick?
Am I sick? No, and I want to say that
I'm
way.
not sick either. So why are they quarantining healthy people?
What's your name, sir?
This is not a law.
I hate this. I really do. I mean, this CBS 2 affiliate, whatever. First of all, you're harassing a small businessman here. The guy's trying to sell ice cream. He's trying to make some money, trying to make a living, and he's not wearing a mask. The chance of him, let's just understand this. It is overwhelmingly likely that he does not, in fact, have COVID-19. I know we can't say he definitely doesn't, but it is very likely that he does not, in fact, have COVID-19. Okay? So that means that he is at zero risk of doing anything to anybody else. Even if, in fact, he has COVID-19 and he has a brief interaction with somebody, you would think the chances of them getting COVID-19, especially if it's children, which is what the whole thing is, oh, he might be infecting children. Children, it's difficult for them to get this, and if they get it, it is effectively changes nothing about their They have no symptoms. Their health is not negatively impacted. But, instead of going up to the guy and saying, hey, man, could you wear some gloves or a mask? That's the responsible way to do this if you want to make a thing of it. To shame him. Yes, let's go out there. Let's be the smug journo morons and go out and shame the business owner and put him on TV. And, how dare he try to feed his family, feed himself, put food on the table, pay his rent. Awful. What a terrible man. Are we really? How long do these morons think we're going to wear masks and gloves forever? Is that their plan? Or until the panic legions decide that it's okay for us to start living our lives again? I'm sorry, but other people's unbelievable fear. I mean, we've seen this with climate change too. The world's going to end, so do everything I say about everything. You better recycle. It was interesting here, and this is a small thing, but here in New York, we had the plastic bag ban go into effect in New York State, New York City, right before this, a few weeks before the pandemic really broke out. And you know what's happened now? I'm getting plastic bags all the time. Do you know why? Because when there's real problems, people realize that's moronic. It's just annoying, stupid harassment. Oh, but the baby seals and the plastic bags and, what are we going to do? No, it was dumb. It was a dumb rule. It's not even better for the environment when you look at the impact on trees and the fuel ratio for taking the heavier paper bags and also the disease risk of people not being able to, or people bringing rather these reusable bags, which are much more likely to have a whole bunch of, yeah, that's right, bacteria, viruses, and disease on them. But it was stupid. And I told you it was stupid. And when this stuff hit the fan, guess what? Everybody else realized it was, in fact, dumb. It was not something we should have been doing. Oh, gee. Now we all figure it out. There's a need to wear some protection in some places at some times. We all understand that. And if you really don't want the ice cream from the ice cream man, and you say that, I will say this. Should he probably be wearing gloves irrespective of COVID-19? I think the answer is yes. I think food service handling. So that I'm a little more like, okay. But, to say, oh, you have to be wearing a mask. We're going to wear. Are we really setting up society to wear masks until there's a vaccine? Anytime you go outside, when outdoor transmission or a brief moment in contact with somebody, unless they're breathing right on your face, is very unlikely to spread this virus. Is that what we're really accepting now? I've got to tell you, I really, the virtue signaling from people on this. Look, it's a complicated, difficult thing, and we're still losing a lot of seniors. That's who we're losing as a result of this, which is tragic. And this is a tough time for the country, but this has now become so thoroughly politicized, and it's just wrong on every level. This is not about left and right. It shouldn't be about pro-Trump, anti-Trump, but that's what the left has turned it into. If you disagree with wearing a mask forever, you're probably one of those gun-toting, Second Amendment-liking, Constitution-reading folks. Well, at least they released Shelley Luther in Texas. That was a victory for sanity. But there's still a lot of crazy people out there, and shaming small business owners for trying to open, it's not cool.